because the silent P said so. Because.
Yeah, and here we have it, folks. It's been such a long time coming. If I could count on two hands how many times there's been an attempt or a action put towards to get this thing off the roads, then I would need more than just two hands. Thank you for tuning in. It is Tyler Switch Dow. That P is silent. If you're listening to this, you know who I am, but you may not know what this is. So let me tell you a little bit about what Cause the Silent P Said So is, what Cause the Silent P Said So is all about. This is the wrestling podcast. This is where we get to talk about the niche art form, the niche product that we all are in love with, that we all are super enamored with, but probably all have a hard time explaining to other people, but also maybe a hard time just getting through on a weekly basis because there's so much good but also so much crap, just like in every other art form. And that's because the Silent P said so. I am the Silent P. I am Tyler Switch Dow. That P is silent. Artist, creative. If you don't know me, for those who are tuning in, who are just getting interested in this, I am an artist and creator from the Bronx, New York. I make music. I'm an entrepreneur. We own a studio out in Queens that we are extremely happy about. And about 5, 6, it might even be 7 years ago. It still feels new to me. But it has been some time. On one night, it was about a week before my birthday, I sat down and I was hanging out with a friend and we started watching Monday Night Raw. And I was obsessed with wrestling as a kid. Like, still to this day, I have a toy box filled with all of my wrestling toys. I remember being in class in the 4th grade and my teacher saying, like, oh, you'd be a great lawyer. And I remember saying, I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a professional wrestler. And somewhere along the lines, I just stopped watching it. And, grew up my whole childhood, my whole adult teenagehood, not really paying attention to it and kind of thinking like everybody else does, oh, that's that fake stuff on television. And then I'm sitting there with my friend on that Monday night and I'm seeing it from a whole new perspective. I'm understanding that these are gentlemen and ladies who are on the road 300 nights a year, putting their bodies on the line to make millions of dollars. And I was like, whoa, this is acting, this is touring, this is music, this is performance, this is writing, all wrapped in one. And I said to myself, I'm going to watch this next week. And it was sporadic here and there in the beginning, but then eventually I'm watching it on Hulu. I'm watching the shortened version of it, and I'm going, hey, oh, wait, this is a shortened version. There's full segments. Oh, I have to watch the full thing. And then eventually I'm watching other YouTube videos, and now I'm part of this whole wrestling community. And once I got in there, it opened up my whole world to indie wrestling. It opened up my world to the vintage territory wrestling, because these were things that I weren't even familiar with as a child. I never understood when I was watching WWF and people were coming from other places. I really only knew WCW and WWF, so I didn't understand, Japanese wrestling. Then I started watching New Japan wrestling, got introduced to Major League Wrestling. I watched Lucha Underground throughout the whole series. So I really, in a matter of like 3 or 4 years, went through a fire hydrant of wrestling, got the WWE Network and watched all the compilations and watched all of these vintage shows, went back and watched the WCW that I watched from my childhood. And you can imagine that I had a lady that I was spending a lot of time with throughout these years, and she just watched me go from, kind of being like interested in wrestling again, taking me to a live show and, it being this small thing to this thing being like me completely obsessed with it. And what it also did was it changed my whole perspective and my narrative on how to create, on how to run a business, understanding that Vince McMahon and WWE was running on a tour business while they had television deals and they had all of these other pay-per-vision deals was, all of this taught me so much about life that I came to the conclusion that professional wrestling is the greatest art form in the world because it is such a composition of all of these other things, you know. And now that I guess 7 years later, I'm on the other end of it. It's not just the wrestling part that I like. It's not just the television part that I like. It's the industry. I understand that there's a psychology about it, that it is an art form that completely connects with the crowd and speaks to the consumer on a normal basis. And to an extent, the consumer has an effect on what the product becomes, you know, for the better or for the worse. So it has become my new way of life. You know, I reference professional wrestling on all the time. And in the YouTube world, in the cynical parts of my mind, even, there's so much negativity about wrestling because there's so much crap. But you got to give wrestling a break, I think, because not only is it trying to touch a market for children where it's selling merchandise, where it's selling all of these things to Walmart, it's also trying to attract people like me who are 28 and 30 years old and are understanding the art form of it and are understanding the craft of it and are kind of obsessed with the industry of it, to not only the 50 and 60-year-old people who have been watching it since they were children. It's trying to cater to all of these things. So what this podcast is, what Cause the Silent P Said So, is where I'm going to talk about the cool stuff that I like in wrestling. I'm going to really talk about the things that I'm passionate about and kind of leave all of the negativity to sit on the other end of the table. Let the other people do that. Here I want to talk about what I really like about it, and I think what truly makes professional wrestling the greatest art form of all time. And it is the greatest art form of all time. And you know why? Do you know why I am allowed to say that? Do you know why it is okay and it is acceptable for me to say that professional wrestling is the greatest art form of all time, and whatever other art form you love and are passionate about is still secondary to professional wrestling? Why am I allowed to say that? Because this is Cause the Silent P Said So, and that's Cause the Silent P Said So. Thank you for tuning in.
Seriously, coup.
That's like so cool. Seriously?